Hey, Randy Joe here, and this is 1000 Reviews, the series where I plan on reviewing every single album from the 1001 albums to listen to before you die book. And today we are looking at the Carpenters' 1970 album, Close to You. The Carpenters released Close to You underneath the A&M label, produced by Jack Daughtry with art direction from Tom Wilkes, nationality USA, in a running time of 36 minutes and 75 seconds. Now, before jumping into this album, I saw that the genre that the Carpenters are often labeled to as is easy listening, which honestly could be the most accurate term I've ever heard to describe the Carpenters, because this is one of the most simplistic and direct yet very effective uses of music I've ever heard. This album is just so warm and soft to the ear and isn't full of complexities like most of the albums in this book. And I am thankful for that, because having listened to so many albums so far, I just do enjoy a nice album like this once in a while that is much easier to take in. And none of that is to say that it is a con or a bad thing. In fact, this all works to the Carpenters' benefit. You have the opening track on here, We've Only Just Begun, which is one of the biggest hits for the Carpenters, especially at the time. This was one of their breakthrough hits on here, along with the title track of this album. But We've Only Just Begun is just a fantastic, not just an opener to this album, but also a opener to their entire career that would go on to span an entire decade. Because even though this is their second album so far, this really was what put them on the map, and they are saying here strongly and confidently, we've only just begun. Karen Carpenter's iconic voice is quickly put on display here and just sounds so beautiful and angelic as it is harmonized and paralleled next to her brother Richard. And the two of them really do come together in such a strong, united sort of way that really creates for this just beautiful harmonic event. The second song on here, Love is Surrender, continues to further show off Karen and Richard's sort of style, but this time in a duet rather than a harmony. And on top of that, the percussion of the song is very easy listening and enjoyable, as it has like this rattling effect throughout the whole song, which is also paired really nicely with these horns that are spliced into the mix throughout. I want to mention the fifth song, Help, on here, which is a cover of the Beatles song, Help, and I have to say that honestly, if I had to pick between the two, I think I would go to this one more often than not, as this version of the song has just more going on in it, has a lot more going for it than the Beatles version, and I think Karen's voice is also just really fantastic and brings out just the emotion in this song. Her voice is highlighted by the fact that the instrumentation will strip back in certain passages throughout this song and really highlight just how strong and important her voice is as an instrument. And about halfway through this song, there's also these angelic ahs that are brought into the mix with this horn wailing as well that really come together and create such a strong effect. And towards the end of this song, it really begins to derail as Karen jumps off of the mix and instead a organ is spliced in. And this organ really takes over for the last minute or so of the track and really carries the rest of this thing home. And ultimately, all these instruments and everything that is being spliced into this version of their version of Help really create just a much richer and textured version of the Beatles version. And so for that, I think this version in many ways is greater than the Beatles version and only continues to further what they were doing. And directly after that is the most iconic Carpenter song of all, They Long to Be Close to You, which before the Carpenters apparently was actually being shopped around to different artists throughout the 60s, but never quite found its footing until the Carpenters came along. And honestly, that is a great thing for it, because the Carpenters really make this their own, and I don't think any other artist could have done this before them to the effect that they did. The Carpenters bring so much to the table and add this very airy atmosphere, and it's very spacey and dreamlike as this romantic sort of tale is spliced through these lyrics. It's such a vivid and atmospheric song that really replicates the feeling of falling in love, or just the feeling of love in general, and it honestly makes this song so prominent and well known. This song is so infamous that so many artists after this would go on to not only sample it, but also do their own versions of it. Most notably, my favorite being the Isaac Hayes version, and even artists still today continue to reference back to it or sample it or splice it into their own music, such as Frank Ocean on his album Blonde. So this song that came out in the 70s, still being referenced today, has quite a bit of impact continually throughout history. And even though I can keep focusing on Karen and just how amazing her voice is, I do want to quickly mention that Richard's voice is just as strong and as effective as Karen's when used effectively. On the 11th track, Karen is nowhere to be seen, and instead is Richard taking the lead vocals, and his vocals really do carry the continuous momentum that Karen has put throughout this album so far. He doesn't tarnish the album in any way, he really adds to the flavor, and it's a nice mix-up and change of pace in this album so far, and I think Richard is just as important to the Carpenters duo as Karen is, and even though he does fly under the radar because of her fantastic voice, this is a track where his voice is just as prominent as hers are on other tracks. And then with the 12th and final track, we have the song Another Song, which is the biggest step away from the Carpenters formula on this entire album. Because this time, instead of going for the easy listening approach, they opt out for a suite of sorts, where there are 3 movements in this song. The first movement of this track being a pop section, the second being the Baroque section, and the third and final movement of this track going into a much more jazz-oriented way. And over the course of this 4 minutes, they ease in and out of these different genres with such smoothness. There is absolutely no sense of staggering between these formulas, and it feels so natural to the Carpenters to go from pop to Baroque to jazz. And I firmly welcome it because this is one of my favorite songs on the album, and I think the jazz section especially is one of the more interesting parts of this entire album. In fact, I would take an entire jazz-oriented Carpenters album just because of this final movement alone in this song. So overall, I feel like this album, even though it is considered easy listening, still manages to show off the potential of the Carpenters and really highlight why they had such a great and well-known legacy in the 1970s. There's still so much to appreciate in this whole album that is definitely, in my opinion, just a great and enjoyable listen from front to back. There are very few moments on here where you'll feel yourself sort of drifting off or losing yourself or losing interest in what you're hearing, and instead you will be fully immersed and relaxed with the sounds that the Carpenters continue to emit throughout. So with that being said, the soft rating of the album for me came to an 8.3 out of 10, and I will harden that rating up to an 8.5 out of 10. And of course, with this album being just so enjoyable in my opinion, I do think it is an essential listen, so it gets in the E for essential. Anyways, that pretty much does it for this review. Let's see what the next album we listen to is in the 1001 albums to listen to before you die. Alright, random number generator, 1 to 1001. Generate 59. Wow, that's pretty low. Number 59 is the next album we listen to, which is 59 being The Who's My Generation. So go ahead and give that a listen, and I'll do that in exactly 1 week from now. Anyways, if you like this video, please hit like and subscribe if you want to follow along and listening to every album from the 1001 albums to listen to before you die book. And as always, my name is Randy Joe, and I am signing off.